And I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, hearing from my grandpa, whose name was Ambrose Finnegan. And, you know, he was an All-American at Santa Clara playing football back in 1905.
I also met with so-called pro-Israel students when I was there, just to hear about the anti-Semitism that they have experienced. And they told me it has been minimum. It has been overblown by the media. We have been uncomfortable, but we don't feel unsafe.
But 2/3 of voters think the economy was better under President Trump.
Well, that's just not the case, and we have to do a better job of laying out the facts that the economy has dramatically improved under the leadership of President Joe Biden.
But if those are the facts, why don't voters believe it? Is that a communication problem?
Voters understand that more needs to be done, that there are challenges that remain.
So, big wall cloud off to the east of me, knocked out the power to some wells. So I come right out of the cellar, right out into the oil field, baby. Gonna go reset some wells, get the production back online, keep America, everybody happy. Let's go!
Welcome back to the Unregulated Podcast. This is episode number 181 here on a Wednesday, May 8th.
It's too
not
hot.
too hot.
It's too hot. It's ghastly hot.
It's a little hot in the studio too.
Yeah, man.
So, Uncle Bozy is apparently now Biden's grandpop.
Yeah, what the hell was that?
I don't understand.
Wasn't
how
he the guy?
Morphed.
He
was the guy who was
eaten by cannibals.
Eaten by cannibals, who now morphed into his grandpop,
And did he go to the University of
as opposed to corn pop.
And did he go to the University of Santa Clara? Is that what he said?
Yeah, he was a top athlete
At Santa Clara.
Yeah, I think that's
so. This
what
guy
he
from
said.
Pennsylvania winds up at Santa Clara in
I
1905.
I can't follow it anymore. But
Guy lives the most
Ambrose, Uncle Bozy, Grandpa Bozy, I don't know.
The guy lives the most fantastical life I've ever heard.
Yes.
It's like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang becomes president or something.
So Congressman Jamal Bowman says that there are so-called pro-Israel students out there. He met with some so-called.
He did. He met with some. He met with some pro-Israel students. Then he pulled a fire alarm, and everybody dispersed.
What's a so-called? If you're not like a pro-Hamas student, then you're a so-called.
Look, when you're a guy whose record includes a misdemeanor beef of pulling a fire alarm,
he's got a little bit of a primary. We'll see how that goes.
Who cares? It's New York.
So, all right, and then speaker. Mine. What do they call the person who minority? What is that?
Minority
Minority leader. Hakeem Jeffries. We have to. Why does he talk like this?
I don't know.
Does it help emphasize words? I don't understand.
It's a speech coach thing. I'm sure somebody taught him to do it, which is probably not helpful, but we could use speech coaches.
Once again, the Democrats just simply have a problem, a communication problem. It's not their policies. It's not their agenda. It's just that the American people don't have enough information. They're low information voters.
They are. I'm a low information voter myself. You know, the thing that should worry them is that inflation is going to get worse. It's going to get worse.
It should worry you. It should worry me. It should worry all of us.
This assault on America's purchasing power is going to get worse, and right before the election, probably.
Yeah, because they're going to spend. You see the slate of articles that came out this week, right?
On all the
about
money.
How much money that they still haven't spent.
Yeah, they need to blow. Yeah. So. It's silly, but there it is.
All right, and then lastly, our friend was in a bunker. This was a wildcatter out in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
He was literally. He's like, woohoo! Let's go! I love that guy, man. That's America.
There's a lot to be said for having some stupid cowboy in you. It really is.
It's awesome.
Everybody should have a little stupid cowboy in them.
All right. Announcements. Do you have any this week? I have 2.
I don't think I have any. I'm sure it's somebody's birthday, but I'll be darned if I can remember.
My first announcement is we have a special guest interview this week with Isaac Orr. Isaac Orr has, until very recently, been an energy analyst at the Center for the American Experiment in Minnesota. He has branched off and has formed a new organization to focus on his modeling work. Great discussion with Isaac. We'll pop that into the show at some point. And my other announcement is I just wanted to wish you...
We even got a couple of sideways swipes at Travis, so it was totally worth the trip.
I wanted to wish you a happy smallpox eradication day.
You know what? Okay, you kid around about that stuff, but that's actually important. That's important.
It is important, but it is officially...
I mean, if smallpox used to kill millions of people.
And I will tell you how important it is, because a woman who wrote an article in Vox said 43 years ago this week, the world was officially declared free of smallpox. But that should only be the beginning. And in her home, she celebrates it as a conventional holiday with piñatas shaped like smallpox viruses, presents for the kids, a cookout, and a big party. So...
Okay, not really.
I'm putting this article in the show notes.
Not really sure I'd be willing to go to all that length, but I'm as impressed by anybody about that.
Okay. This day in history in 18...
Oh, wait a minute. What day is the day? The 8th?
8th. May 8th already.
May 8th.
1886.
I suppose I should point out that my parents' anniversary is May 5th. They would be married 68 years now had my father survived. So that's my announcement for the day. May 8th. What's the year?
1886 on this day. No.
Yeah, okay.
Dr. John Pemberton.
I was going to guess that. Oh, Coca-Cola.
A pharmacist from Atlanta, Georgia.
Sure, man.
Developed the syrup for the famed beverage, which was sampled at the local Jacobs Pharmacy and deemed to be excellent. The name of Coca-Cola was a suggestion given by Pemberton's bookkeeper, Frank Robinson, as the recipe called for the coca leaf extract and caffeine from the cola nut.
Yeah, I'm
originally named Coca-Cola with a K. However, Robinson was an expert in branding, and so he switched the K to a C, and he developed the famous swirly cursive.
And I'm sitting here drinking a Coke right now, and then Frank Robinson went on to a good career with the Reds and the Orioles, becoming one of the only second switch hitter to hit 500 home runs.
Coca-Cola was born on this day, and we all know that we'd like to teach the world to sing.
You got to say this much about Coke, just as an American brand, there's nothing like it on the planet, right?
It has done more than $41 billion in annual revenue and a workforce now of 146,200 employees.
It's a remarkable business, right? It seems to be the invincible.
But I wish I was around for the old soda, like the soda jerk days, or when you went to the pharmacy to hang out and have your sodas.
Yeah, there's a place in Charlottesville that does that.
Bob Dole was a soda jerk as well. Yeah, listen, we're full of history. Another one. This happened in 1902.
Oh boy, May 8, 1902.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, give me a hint.
It was not good for the citizens of Martinique.
There was a hurricane that struck Martinique.
No, there was a pretty nasty volcano eruption.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it wiped out 30,000 civilians, 15% of the population of the island. In the city of St. Pierre, all but one survivor.
Holy mackerel. That doesn't sound good.
And the reason he survived
because he got the smallpox vaccine.
No.
No.
His name was Ludger Silberus.
Oh yeah.
And he's a survivor because he was basically the town drunk who got thrown in the jail for the evening, which was completely enclosed by rocks in a small window. And he was able to survive because he closed the window took his pants off, basically. Mm-hmm. And he ended up being the sole survivor. So, went on to be the first African-American member of Barnum and Bailey Circus.
Really?
Yeah.
And by the way, you can't see this? Guy's a dead ringer for Jamie Foxx.
Dead ringer.
Just a dead ringer. It's creepy. It's like
1945. You probably will guess this.
May 2nd, 1945.
No.
May 8th, 1945. The surrender of the Germans to the American Allied Forces.
Full and unconditional surrender. This
by Carl Jodl. Carl Jodl. Jodl, Admiral Jodl.
On May 8th, 1945, both Great Britain and the United States celebrate Victory in Europe Day.
Yeah. I'm glad.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad. I mean, it's been straight downhill run for the Europeans ever since, but I'm glad nonetheless.
We're going to have net zero transition day here pretty soon. We're going to celebrate. Okay, two quick ones. 1984, retaliation for something that happened in 1980.
Oh, we boycotted. The Russians boycotted announced they were boycotting Los Angeles Olympics.
And a boon for the Americans who went on to sweep a record 83 gold medals when the East Germans and the Soviets were not participating in the summer games.
And, nobody really missed them. Nobody missed them. I mean, seriously.
I think that's when we got Mary Lou Retton, too, right? Was that the 84 deal?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was. So. I think it was. Yeah, no, it totally was. Because I remember in one of the more embarrassing moments of my life, we actually, one of my fraternity brothers, who's a great big giant tall dude, about 6'4", wanted to go see her at a book signing in 1984, maybe early 85. So we had to go with him to the bookstore in Philly. We were seriously the only 3 males there over the age of like 10.
That's a little creepy.
It was awful. I was like, we got to go. Bill's like, no, we're staying. I got to get my book signed. I'm creepy. Like, Bill, man, this is not, we shouldn't be here.
All right. And then lastly, we talked about her at lunch today. In 1999.
In 1999.
This happened.
1999?
Yes.
We talked about her at lunch?
Yes, we did. We talked about her at lunch. The first woman to graduate from the Citadel.
Oh. Congresswoman Mace.
That's correct. Yeah. Nancy Mace.
Except we didn't really talk about her graduating
from the Citadel. We did talk about her.
We did.
Our friends know what we talked about.
We did. That's it.
All right.
We talked about her.
I want to talk politics.
Was that really 25 years ago?
19 on this day.
Wow. Okay, go ahead. Which, by the way, I got to tell you this story real quick. I know you want to talk about a bunch of stuff in the category of, was that long ago? At a meeting this morning.
that comes up.
Yes, all the time.
Way too often now for us old dudes.
At a meeting this morning, we're having this conversation about loneliness and social media. And one of the guys in the room was a reporter, your typical punk kid. He was probably 30. He's like, well, there was that book in the 70s about bowling. I'm like, you mean Robert Putnam's sociological book, Bowling Alone? He's like, yeah, that was it. I'm like, that was in 1990. At which point the lady who was running the meeting, who was a governor of a state who shall remain nameless, looked at me, literally pointed down the table at me and said, that was 34 years ago. Like it was... Like somehow it was like when the Confederacy was still around or when dinosaurs walked the earth. She goes, half the people in this room weren't even born then. I looked at her for a second. I'm like, thank you? Yeah, is that the appropriate thing when you call me an old geezer?
If you work your way backwards from the music that like we listen to the music that where people are listening to now, you're talking like big band. And like 40 stuff.
It got
right?
it actually
That's how crazy
it actually got worse it got worse after the meeting was over because a friend of mine introduced me to a couple of friends of his. He's Mike worked in the Trump administration. I'm like, why couldn't you lead with Mike worked in the Reagan administration? Was everybody going to lead me with this thing?
Went down. Mike worked in the Reagan administration, that went downhill from there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Ladies and gentlemen, this show has now devolved into us lamenting about our age.
Go ahead. Right. Go ahead.
So let's start out with the clip here. Producer, could you play the ABC poll for me?
And Biden seems to be struggling with key demographic groups that he would need to win and win big if he stands a chance of being reelected.
John, there is significant softness in the support for Joe Biden among core Democrats. In this poll, he's carrying black voters by 61 points. Well, that sounds like a lot, but he carried them by 84 points back in 2020. Latino voters, a very slight Biden edge in this poll, but it was a 21-point advantage in the exit polls back in 2020. And among younger voters under 30, we're actually seeing Trump with a slight edge. That was a big win for Biden last time around. It's particularly stark to see that difference among voters of color. Black voters under under age 50 far less likely in this poll to say they're supporting Joe Biden than older black voters.
So that was a ABC News and Pew Research poll. The numbers you didn't hear were Biden +4 for Hispanics versus +21 in 2020, and Trump +5 under 30 voters under 30, and +24 in 2020 was the margin for Biden. So is the coalition cracking here or what?
Yeah, I mean, if you've been listening to this show for any length of time, I say this every week. I'll say it again. President Biden is suffering erosion among black voters, among Hispanic voters. I'm not so sure about the young voters. I think that's I'm not sure that's legitimate. But the black voters and Hispanic voters, it is legitimate. At the same time, President Trump is suffering some erosion among suburban voters,
and I heard of older voters.
I'm sure. Yeah. So this race this race remains as it has remained for probably 3 months now, right? It's going to be decided by 400,000 votes, 500,000 votes in 6 swing states spread across about 40 counties.
Yeah. Okay. And let me just add this dimension to it, because there was a primary in Indiana yesterday.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. But
yeah. We're
one of the data points coming out of that is yet again, about 20% of the Republican primary voters chose Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
About 128,000 votes.
Yeah.
So are those protest votes or are those Biden votes? Like what's that?
Those are likely to be Biden votes. Look, again, the President Trump is suffering erosion from suburban voters, especially suburban women, and college-educated suburban women, especially. So, yeah, are they gonna vote for somebody like Governor Haley? They are. Are they going to turn around and vote for Trump? Some of them will. Some of them won't. Some will sit home. We'll see.
I mean, so far.
But I mean, that's all that's baked into the polling, and it's not like Trump's going to. It's not like whoever the Republican candidate is not going to lose Indiana, so it doesn't really matter.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, no,
I understand that, but no, I understand that, but the trend line is that Michigan, for example, which matters, Arizona, which example matters. She got 26% in Michigan and 18% in Arizona.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying to you, what I'm saying to you is this. I hesitate to do this because it makes me sound like an old guy, but the media is flogging its own pet horse, and that is these are all protest votes. True, but you know what? Doesn't change any of the survey work, which tells you that Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada are going to be close.
They are going to be close. So the question I have for you is, before we kick over to the primary results in Indiana, is this a chase the base to the very end, or is, in order for Trump to win, is he gonna have to try to reach out and tact and try to grab voters that are not in the base?
No, these guys, everybody who's going to vote, not everybody, most everybody who's going to vote's made up their mind about these two guys. They've been on they have been in the American scene for 50 years now. They're well known. Everyone's got well-developed opinions about them. The guys on the margins who are going to vote, who are still gettable, are going to vote for or against them, are driven by the economy, which is a disaster. Right. So the trick for the Republicans is turning out their guys.
Okay. And also doing the things that need to be done prior to election day.
Yeah. But I mean,
which I think they're finally coming around on. Well, all right, let's pick it right now.
If you look, just
election
one more second.
Today, who wins?
If you look at the progress at mail-in, mail-outs, Republicans are closing the gap on the Democrats. Is it going to be enough? Maybe.
Elections held today. Who wins?
I think if the election was held tomorrow morning, I think Trump. I think what I've thought for about 3 months now, Trump would win about 62 out of 100 times. You ran it 100 times, Trump would win 62 times. I see nothing that's changed my mind on that.
Got it. All right. Indiana mostly went as expected. As you mentioned, it is a deep, deep, deep red state. The new governor of the state will likely be the current senator.
That's just such
of the state of Indiana,
so distressing.
Senator Braun.
It's just terrible.
The there was no opposition to Jim Banks.
Yeah.
He's the Republican nominee.
He's going to be
likely going to be the senator.
He's going to be a right good senator.
He's going to be a pretty darn good contribution to the United States Senate.
I think he's going to be great.
Hopefully he'll get some stuff done there. And then
look, we're basically trading Mike Braun for Jim Banks, or Jim Banks for Mike Braun.
That's an upgrade.
That's a good trade. Yeah, it's an upgrade. Yeah.
Marlon Stutzman is coming back.
Thank goodness. You can't have enough guys named Marlon floating around Congress.
And Victoria Spartz.
She won. Yay!
Is coming back.
Let the madness continue.
I didn't want to run, but I changed my mind. She will also be back. And the Greg Pence seat will belong now to former Indianapolis City Councilman Jefferson Shreve, who spent a whopping $4.5 million of his own money to secure a victory
God, in heaven above
over Mike Speedy and businessman James Carrier.
You know, if I was like one of his family members, I would sue him for incompetence.
Why are you doing this to my inheritance?
It's insane.
It's a lot of cash, man. I don't think I'll even have that.
To be a freshman member of Congress? Are you drunk?
So that was the Indiana primary news. Anything? Any more political stuff you want to bring up?
No, I don't think so.
Good. All right, let's talk energy, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, let's start with one of my least favorite people in Washington, Amos.
Oh, wow.
Hochstein.
Wow, that thing he said, he basically came out in favor of war crimes. I was like, crimes against humanity. I was like, what?
This is from Reuters. Let me pull this out. Look. The U.S. and its allies must encourage mining projects in countries where Western corporations...
Wait a minute. You're going to want to make sure that, like people know this is more or less a direct quote.
Now, I'll read the quotes.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
To do business to guarantee a reliable and sustainable global supply of critical minerals needed to combat climate change, a senior White House official said on Monday. Here is the quote: "We can all live in the capitals and cities around the world and say, I don't want to do business there. But what you are really saying is we're not going to have an energy transition, because the energy transition is not going to happen if it can only be produced where I live under my standards."
Yeah, it's just a hell of an admission right there. It really is if you think about it.
If you want to invest in whether it's Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Mexico, Congo, Zambia, DRC, etc., Angola, these are different profile countries that have different kinds of risks associated with them. And Western finance has basically said we will not be able to absorb this risk. What he's essentially saying
he's not essentially saying.
He's saying that we have to be like China.
Yeah, man. Can't break an omelet without can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs.
At least to his credit, Special Envoy and now Presidential Medal of Freedom winner John Kerry said it's not in my lane.
Is he going to throw that medal?
I almost give him credit now for like he did not cross for at least not crossing the Rubicon.
For at least acknowledging that if there's some unpleasantness going around.
This guy literally said we need to take market share of child labor from China.
Yeah, man. Why not?
That is what he said.
Slave labor, child labor, genocide. It's all in. Transition uber alles. It's terrifying. You know, me too. Away. You know, it's hard to impress me anymore, but that impressed me. Hey, by the way, on this Kerry thing, is he going to throw this medal over the fence of the White House?
I think he took the other one off.
Of course he did.
To put this one on. All right, I got another one here. BP. This is from Reuters.
British Petroleum or
BP Petroleum. Softens tone on 2030 oil output cut to reassure investors.
So I guess they're back to being British Petroleum.
Well,
now.
Not quite all the way back.
Some of the way back.
Yeah. BP softened the language on its pledge to cut its 2030 oil and gas output in an effort to reassure investors over its energy transition strategy and narrow a gaping value gap with rivals.
I'm sorry, a gaping what gap?
Value gap.
What the hell is that?
It's the profitability of the company.
Oh, why can't you just say that?
You could, perhaps.
Okay.
So The new CEO, Murray, how do you say it? Auchincloss? Auchincloss? Bernard Looney.
Not gonna work here
has
anymore.
Not reversed a flagship target Looney announced in 2020 before watering it down in 2023 for BP to reduce oil and gas output by around 25% between 2019 and 2030 to 2 million barrels of oil equivalent per day. BP is the only major oil company to have target reduction goals and has pledged concern to some investors.
Do you ever wonder how it must be to work for communications for one of these outfits? I mean, you just
2 million is a decent number to stick by right now. Could it be higher? Yeah. Could it be lower? Yes. And as we make those decisions on a returns basis approach that will help inform what we think our production will be in 2030.
Stop.
But I am focused on returns and cash flow, not volume.
On a returns basis approach, who talks like that?
Doesn't matter. The larger point is that
I get it.
End with a whimper, not with a bang.
I get
BP
it. But you know what? I want?
Back
I want one of these. I want one of these oil companies to say, "Yeah, you know what? We are planting hedgerow to hedgerow. We are going to produce as much as we can. We're going to make a bunch of money, and we are going to save lives and make lives better for millions of people on this planet. And if you don't like it, you can go to hell
or not buy my stock."
And you know what? I think at that point, everybody who's not like a European, what's the nicest word? A European stunad here would be like, yes, thank God somebody said it.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, all right.
In a world hungry for leadership, these guys are giving us nothing.
I mean, they're
giving us nothing.
Dipping their toe in the waters. They're testing to see how it feels.
You know what? At least old Amos there said, "Hey, you know what? Just buckle up, Mary, because we're going to need to do some genocide and slavery here. Get on it."
Just crazy.
I love it. At least it's definitive. He said, "Hey, we're not going to have a transition without some genocide. You guys need to get over it. Move along."
All right, I got another one here. Cadillac. This is from wardsauto.com. Cadillac.
The Cadillac of cars.
Softens EV only push.
Yeah, I saw this.
General Motors is backing away from a previous goal of having a 100% BEV battery electric vehicle showroom by 2030.
There's a quote in there that is inexplicable.
No, that's what I was going to read.
And I'm like, what the hell? I read it 4 times trying to figure out what he meant.
I know what you're talking about. Cadillac will mostly continue selling internal combustion engine vehicles beyond 2030, reversing a previous target of having all electric showroom by the end of the decade.
Well, the good news is BP's going to produce oil to be put into the Cadillacs. So winner.
Yeah. So I think the quote you were talking is, tell me if this is it. "We will be offering an all EV portfolio and let the customer be our guide. What that materializes to, we will work through internally, discussing our competitive advantage in the marketplace and not put." No, that's not the one.
No, that's exactly the one.
Is it?
An all EV,
not pull all our cards on the table at once.
An all EV portfolio. What the hell does that mean?
Oh,
that these people don't speak English.
Yeah, this is in the article. Cadillac plans to have BEVs in all the segments in which it competes, but Roth is leaving open the possibility and even likelihood that the division will still be offering ICE vehicles, including hybrids, beyond 2030.
I think what he's trying to tell you is you can get all of our vehicles being electric vehicles.
But we're not getting rid of the ICE vehicles.
Right. But you know what? Here's what worries me about corporate America. Their lack of precision in speech reflects the lack of precision in thinking. Which is why guys like old Amos,
because they're pulled all.
No, it's because they're
trying to please everybody.
That's right. They're basically they're terrible people. That's where old Amos has got it right on. Right? He's just like, hey man, nobody walked away from that Amos thing going, gee, I wonder what the hell he meant. No, you knew exactly what he meant.
I just can't believe that got cleared.
I assume when I read it, truthfully, when I read it, I figured he was going to get fired today.
I mean,
I assume he still is going to get fired today, just because you can't say that and stay. I mean, I guess you can. I mean, but at some point, Mr. Trump is going to say, the guy in charge of this says, sure, bring on the genocide.
Can't get a hold of that.
Crazy.
We should give him a ring. All right, so VP walking back, Cadillac walking back.
We think walking is Mercedes and Mercedes.
I had that article. Thank you. Now I want to play a clip for you from apparently not everyone's walking it back, and apparently it's good business.
The investments that Canada is attracting today are coming to Canada in large part because foreign investors recognize that we have a price on pollution and we have a strong climate plan. And that means they want to be here and make stuff here in Canada.
How many businesses are flocking to Canada to pay a tax?
Millions. There's thousands. There aren't enough boats in this planet to bear the traffic heading towards Canada.
Because no businesses are tolerant of regimes that don't price carbon. Did we just have?
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna have these numbers before tomorrow, next week's show. I'm gonna assess who's doing better, Mexico or Canada. I'm willing to bet a lot of money it's Mexico. A lot of money it's Mexico.
I don't understand.
And the terrible thing is Canada used to be a legitimate country. I mean, it really did. It was actually a sturdy ally.
Yeah, it was just a friendlier, little less.
Look, it was like a poorly run Minnesota, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it
no harm, no foul. Like our friends up there in the north.
Now it's just become a poorly run Alaska.
Anyway, so just in case you were wondering out there, businesses are flocking to Canada because
for the chance to pay some taxes,
chance to pay more taxes.
That's essentially what it comes down to.
That runs a little inconsistent with history. And then I have this piece from The Hill. Shocker. Monmouth University conducted a poll April 18 to 22 shows a 10-point decline in Americans who say climate change is a very serious problem.
Yeah.
Falling from 56% in September 2021.
Yeah.
And 46% in April.
Now, right?
Now.
2024. Yeah.
So
that I saw that survey. I actually had some time with those results. I find that not surprising. The amount of bleeding on the economy is affecting everybody's thoughts.
Oh, sure.
It's just you
Absolutely.
can't. Yeah.
I mean, it's the age-old problem.
It's not a
problem. It's the age-old thing. If you're doing fine, then you focus on other things.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
That's right. And this thing, the conversation is just dominated now by the economy and immigration. And truthfully, President Trump holds the high ground on both of those things. They're going to have to put him in jail. It's the only way he's going to lose.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I'm going to veer off of energy for a second. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Generation Z sinks deeper into debt. Inflation drives many to credit cards to cover costs, leaving them with bigger balances. Young Americans are starting out with more credit card debt than generations before them. The financial burden can have long-lasting effects.
I'm sorry, what year is that? How old are you if you're in Generation Z?
I think you're...
How old are you?
You're a millennial, right? Yeah. So these are younger than the millennials.
They're just inventing this stuff, aren't they? They're just inventing this nonsense.
The rising debt load largely reflects a surge in prices for food and shelter at the start of their careers, coupled with a larger percentage of Gen Z who graduated with student loans. The average credit card balance for 22 to 24-year-olds was $2,834 in the last quarter of 2023, compared with an inflation-adjusted balance of $2,200 in the same period in 2013.
That's pretty good, man. When I was young, a lot higher numbers than that.
Yeah, well, they're also starting out with a pretty high salary compared to what I was
scratching, man. What the hell? What are these people complaining about? Good gravy. So, when I was their age, we're gonna have that. We're gonna have this episode, aren't we? This is gonna be when I was your age.
Yeah, we've already
seriously, man.
About our age so far.
We already got the title for this thing. That was 34 years ago.
All right, so the answer, my friend, is not blowing in the wind. Back to energy. This is from our friend Nick at the Daily Caller. New data highlights Achilles heel of one of Biden's favorite green power sources. New government data shows that wind power generation fell in 2023, despite the addition of new capacity.
2.1%, right?
2.1% in 2023 relative to 22 generation, despite the 6 gigawatts of wind power capacity that came on last year, according to data published by US EIA. Wind power up a drop despite new capacity coming online, and the availability of government subsidies highlights its intermittency and the problems wind power could pose for grid reliability.
Yeah, let me stop you right there. So Roger Pilkey wrote a Substack wrote an article on a Substack on this, and it was worth reading. He makes an interesting point. He said, "Man, if we had installed 6 more gigs of nuclear power last year, which would essentially be 6 large nuclear power plants, and nuclear share of nuclear generation dropped 2%, there would be congressional investigations, right? This is serious, right?" Anyway, he used it as a touchstone to argue, and I think persuasively, that the problem with wind is that its energy density is just not great, and it's never going to be great.
Of course.
That we may be at some sort of real or theoretical ceiling on wind's ability to meet our energy needs, which, if true, it's going to be a huge freaking problem for the guys who are in favor of net zero, because their whole operation is built around that wind is going to be this thing.
Spend the whole rest of the episode on wind, but we're not. But we can talk about the graveyards that are piling up in Texas,
but this drop, nobody's talking about this drop. I've been surprised. I hope so.
So here's a quote: "Relying on wind power to meet your peak electricity demands is gambling with the grid," said Isaac Orr, who
is our guest this week, who's going to talk to us for a long time.
And we're going to play it right now.
Right now.
All right, we are so pleased to have a special guest this week. I don't know why we have not had him on.
This is dereliction of duty on my part, probably.
Totally and completely. Isaac Orr. Isaac, welcome to the Unregulated Podcast. Tell our listeners who you are. I hope most of them know who you are, but if they don't, tell them anyway.
Yeah, I am now currently, new job alert. I'm the Vice President of Policy Research at Always On Energy Research. It's a startup energy modeling firm, basically a public policy organization. We're a 501c3. But before that, I was at Center of the American Experiment for several years. And we did a lot of modeling for not like underwear modeling, but energy modeling for EPA regulations and also state level policies. So that's probably where most people know me from.
Well, I'm certainly grateful that it wasn't underwear modeling. And the work that you have done to peg the costs of the
I love it.
Easy
phrasing.
Easy
of
boy.
the EPA's numerous regulations designed by design to make electricity more expensive have been very helpful to the overall conversation. The more recent power plant rule, which I don't know what it's called.
111, just 111.
Right, but the Clean Power
Clean Power Plan
3.0 or whatever. Have you guys run the numbers on that, and what have you found?
Yeah, we're in the process of doing that right now. We were hired by the state of North Dakota, essentially. The transmission authority out there asked us to run a resource adequacy, reliability, and cost model on the finalized rules that came out on April 24th. So they're going to hit the Federal Register May 9th. So we're recording this on the 8th. I didn't want to say tomorrow because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. But so yeah, we're in the process of doing that right now. And obviously the big difference between the finalized rule and the proposed rule is EPA is exempting the existing natural gas fleet from greenhouse gas regulations at this time.
I was going to say temporarily exempting.
Temporarily exempting, yeah. So that does impact the degree of capacity shortfalls that we found. So when we modeled the proposed rules, we found huge blackouts. So we were talking like 20% of the MISO market, Mid-Continent Independent Systems Operator. We're located in Minnesota, so we tend to focus on MISO, would have been blacked out during periods of low wind and solar generation based on the way EPA modeled its grid in its regulatory impact analysis. And we're still seeing huge capacity shortfalls. We're talking 27 gigawatts based on certain weather years. Essentially, what we do is when we are testing EPA's assumptions for reliability, we take all the power plants that they have constructed within their model and we say, can these power plants meet your electricity demand every hour of the year based on historical wind and solar generation on an hourly basis? And they can't. It's not good. It's not good, Bob.
Oh, wait a minute. You mean sometimes the wind doesn't blow in your area or the sun doesn't shine in your area?
Yeah, and it's not just MISO. It's a lot of times it's Southwest Power Pool as well, the RTO to our west. So you can have region-wide wind droughts that impact the ability to, send power back and forth. There's this idea among, the policy people on the left that say, all we need to do is build big wires and we'll pump power from one side of the country to the other because the wind is always blowing somewhere. And that's just frankly not the case.
I got a bunch of questions. Let me start with two real simple ones. I read your first analysis. It was just really, really, really good. So anybody out there thinking about modeling, think about these guys because they got the secret sauce. My first question when I read that was like, did MISO ever come see you guys about this?
No, but they did file separate comments. So one of the things that MISO likes to do is they like to use Monte Carlo simulations to figure out what they think the wind might do in the future.
Yeah.
And they haven't been as much on the let's just hindcast what's already happened train when it comes to hourly fluctuations in wind and solar generation. They have changed that recently. So when they're doing basically, whenever MISO is trying to figure out whether they have enough reliable power plants on their system, they give every type of power plant a capacity accreditation or a capacity value. It's essentially a guess of how much that plant is going to be able to produce during periods of peak demand. And now they're actually starting to look at historic wind and solar generation during those periods in order to kind of downwardly adjust the capacity value that they're giving wind and solar. So we think that, maybe they saw it, maybe they didn't, but regardless, they're moving our direction. We're not moving theirs when it comes to figuring this out.
Yeah, they saw it. The judges, I'll tell you that right now. I know they saw it. And was read inside MISO at some length. Okay, question number 2. You probably missed this. Maybe you didn't. Roger Pilkey published a Substack a couple of days ago about wind, the relative density, energy density of wind. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at that. I wonder if you had any thoughts about that. I could summarize it for you if you want, but if you read it, I won't bother.
Yeah, I read it. I thought it was pretty good. I thought that the studies that he was citing showing the decline in wind generation due to basically the deterioration of the turbines was interesting. And that's something that we want to look into. That study was kind of drawing a linear line. So basically for the folks at home who might not have read it, it said that wind output is going to fluctuate for turbines based on your weather conditions, but there's also going to be kind of a structural decline in the amount of generation that they can produce based on just wear and tear on the machine. So to me, I thought that was the most interesting part, or at least the most novel part.
The second thing, I mean, Pilkey didn't get to this, but I'm assuming he's going to because he's a fairly thorough guy. At some point, we're going to talk about the fact that we're now dealing with second-class sites, right? That all the best sites have sort of been developed, right? We're now getting into the slightly less good sites. So I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
I mean, it's like oil and gas development, right? The folks who are drilling for it are going to develop their core acreage, their highest yielding acreage first. And once those sites are gone, they're going to start moving into the areas that are secondary or, even further down the list for quality. So there's a lot of repowering happening. Basically, after 10 years, wind turbines run out of federal subsidies, which is the magical juice that keeps them going. So they've found that they can re-qualify for the federal tax credits if they do a substantial remodel of the wind turbine. So that can be replacing the gearbox, that can be putting longer blades on the wind turbines in order to improve the specific density, essentially allowing the turbine to to produce more power.
To be more specific, they found that which they helped create.
Yes.
In the first place, correct? They were the architects of the changes for qualifying for the subsidies. So,
all right, I want to get to the battery storage thing in a second or two because the headline was just too great for words. I have a bet with a bunch of different people. I'd like your input on the bet. 15 years from now, how many offshore wind turbines are we going to have on the Atlantic coast?
Oh man, I mean, that's like asking how stupid East Coast states are, and like it's not even a question of how many should we have. Is it economically feasible? I think we're going to have quite a few, just because people on the East Coast are going to get what they vote for.
Well, they've been trying really hard off the coast of New York and New Jersey, and really hard, and they still can't quite get it done.
Right answer is fewer than a couple of hundred.
Megawatts or just turbines?
Turbines.
What are we? Okay.
Just turbines. Maybe a couple in Virginia. The
Dominion thing's coming along.
The Dominion thing's coming along. Eventually, it's going to crater, but it's still coming along. It's going to crater for the same reason New York thing's cratered.
I want to ask you just a very general question, and then you can answer it however you'd like. Maybe give us an example or two. But how costly, and I mean like truly costly, are blackouts for our economy?
Oh, damn it. I was going to ask that question.
You guys should have drawn straws or something.
Well, before you answer that, I want your answer to include, as well as I do, utilities have embedded in all of their considerations the value of loss of load, right? The VOLL. You guys just did some just really good work that I think kind of exposed the VOLL as, I don't want to say not quite an accurate portrayal of the world, but not quite an accurate portrayal of the world. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Feel free.
You did.
Yeah,
I did.
I didn't mean to interrupt because you did.
It's because their work actually hit.
Fine.
It's because their work put a bunch of dirt on VOLL, which is like a religious item. Go ahead, Isaac.
Well, it's interesting because I don't feel like we felt like we were putting a bunch of dirt on the value of lost load. So essentially, like what this is for the listener at home, it's the willingness of people to pay to not have a blackout. And, that value is going to change, or it's going to be a lot different depending on what kind of customer you are. If you're a residential customer and you're just going to be out or without air conditioning for a little bit, you're probably not too concerned about that. But if you're a grocery store, like we saw in Colorado, when Xcel Energy cut electricity off to a whole bunch of people in order to, try to preempt wildfires because they're spending way too much money on wind and solar and they're not adequately maintaining their transmission, you can see huge costs of blackouts. So same with industrial facilities. There's a lot of opportunity cost there. So value of lost load just tries to say, this is the social cost of blackouts, which is how I like to say it because it triggers people who want to talk about the social cost of carbon. But for a small grocery store in Colorado, it was the Niwot Market. They lost something along the order of $12,000 per megawatt hour of electricity that they were unable to consume because the power got cut off, and then all of a sudden the food in the freezer starts going bad, essentially. So that's what the cost is for a grocery store. It's going to be more or less for other people, but this is a real. I don't know if it's an externality necessarily. Travis Fisher lectured me for calling it that, but Travis is a nerd, so we don't need to.
Wait a minute. Hold on for a second.
We'll get Travis on. You guys.
Travis is not a nerd. Travis is a geek. Please get that right.
I don't know what the difference is, so you guys will have to.
It's not important. We got to say both of it. We got to say both in the same sentence, so that's a win. It doesn't matter what the difference is. Go ahead. So
I mean, it's massive. And nobody even died in this blackout for Colorado. So once you start incorporating the loss of life, like you could for Texas, right? EPA says $9 million per lost life when they're promulgating regulations and trying to calculate the social benefits of whatever new fresh horror they're trying to launch upon the American economy. So yeah, I mean, it's essentially limitless in some respects, but the longer it goes on, the worse it is as well. So yeah, it's a big problem.
So I wanted to let me follow up with that and say we are in a situation where, for the time being at least, the ramifications of these policies cumulatively have been very expensive for U.S. taxpayers, very lucrative for corporations who benefit directly from these policies, and until more recently, expensive for mostly ratepayers, right? Individual ratepayers, because electricity rates have gone up over the past, say, decade, while at the same time the input costs for some of the commodity prices for some of the things that we used to make electricity with have gone way down. So we probably should have been enjoying lower electricity prices. I do the wind up because it's only been expensive and stupid up to this point. But are we getting to the point where it's going to go beyond that, and we're going to start seeing some pretty significant harm to people, like you said,
Yeah,
loss
absolutely.
of life? And so the reason I asked that, I assumed you were going to say yes, because it is happening already to some extent. But does that change the dynamic? Like, what changes the dynamic in this conversation? We're already seeing companies, who have been playing ball with this net zero stuff start to walk it back. Like, what's the end game here? Like, how do you see our side, coming out on top over all this nonsense?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to care about reliability until their power doesn't come on. And it's probably going to take more than one instance of the power not coming on before they actually believe that the preferred policy or energy sources that have been pushed by the left for the last 3 decades were the cause of that. So I mean, even in California, the thing about reliability is tough because grid operators are going to try and get by as long as they possibly can, because that's their job. So in California, they're leaving all of these natural gas peaking plants online, even though they were supposed to be shut down like several years ago at this point. They actually came around to nuclear power, which surprised me and made me a little sad, actually. Like, it was the right thing to do, but I just want California to feel punished. I think, the blackouts are going to happen if we shut down the coal fleet, especially in MISO. North American Electric Reliability Corporation came out with their long-term reliability assessment and basically said MISO is the most at risk of rolling blackouts between 2024 and 2028 because they're losing a lot of thermal generation, and with the new EPA regulations, basically making new natural gas plants infeasible to build because of you either need to put CCS on them or burn clean hydrogen, which doesn't exist. We are going to have a shortfall. So yeah, I mean, hopefully that is able to instill some common sense in people. But even in Texas, which it should be the easiest sell in the world, Texas is like still determined to out California when it comes to their energy policy. And frankly, like, they probably need to go back to some sort of like capacity market structure. But there's a lot of resistance to that. They think that run and gun energy only market is the way to go, and I think that has kind of shown that it doesn't work in Texas and Alberta. So yeah, I don't know. Like, the beatings will continue until policy improves, I guess, is the main takeaway there.
Well, speaking of which, and sorry to hijack this from you, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, I mean,
you have a policy solution that we in the free market community may or may not embrace or wrap ourselves around. Do you want to explain this only pay for what you get concept?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't embrace my great idea. So
such humility.
It's the best. It's going to be huge.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So, in many parts of the country, the utilities are allowed to make back 100% of whatever they spend on an asset, plus their rate of return, which is often 7.5%. So if you build a wind turbine, you get to charge the ratepayers for the whole cost of that wind turbine, plus a cool 7.5% profit for the shareholder. And that leads utility companies to want to shut down their depreciated coal plants, which are not producing a return for them, and to build wind, solar, and natural gas in order to pad the rate base, increase rates, and basically deliver the highest possible return for their shareholder. So in some respects, you have to respect the hustle on their side, but they are a monopoly utility, so they shouldn't really be allowed to green plate the grid like that. So the idea that my colleague Mitch Rolling and I came up with would only allow the utilities to make a profit on the reliable portion of an asset. So basically, if MISO says a wind turbine is only going to be 18% available when the power is needed most, the utility company only gets to profit on 18% of that asset. And same with solar. They think it's going to be 50%, but that's going to definitely fall moving forward as we kind of experience the duck curve throughout the rest of the country. So, go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry, is it a pure capacity factor question, or is it capacity factor in a specific time?
Capacity value.
Yeah.
Capacity value is just the estimate of how reliable, or basically the grid operator says, we think this asset is going to be performing at X capacity factor during the hours that we need it most.
Yeah.
So, yep.
So it's a pretty simple equation.
Yeah.
The bottom line is you get what you incentivize. With humans, with organizations, with everything, you get what you incentivize. Unless you're in Texas, in which case you got hundreds of dead and nobody seems to care. So, sorry. It's true. You guys did something that I'd wanted to do for a while, so I'm glad you did it because I'm too lazy to do it. You took a hard look at the battery storage and its actual cost, especially when compared to an alternative, which would be storage of liquefied natural gas on site at gas-fired generation instead of batteries to smooth the curve. And if I get this number wrong, I apologize. Correct me. You concluded that battery storage was 1,141 times more expensive than LNG storage. Is that? There's 141 times.
141.
141 times. Okay.
Everybody, check out our Substack. It's Energy Bad Boys. So this is where most of the material for this podcast has come from. But
let me just buy the rights to the song. Do you play that at the beginning? Or?
No. let me just second this right now. This Substack is totally worth the read. It's quick. It's easy. The math is simple to follow. Don't be afraid of it because it's math. And it's really, it comes at these things from a different perspective, a different point of view sometimes. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Isaac. Go ahead.
No, I mean, the whole thought process and ethos of our Substack is we want to give people the ammunition they need to curb stomp the arguments of the other side. So as long as that's fun to you, then you're gonna love what we do over there. But yeah, so we looked at the cost of storing enough energy for 5 days of essentially a 285 megawatt output. So I've got a buddy who works at Otter Tail Power, and it's a small investor-owned utility in Minnesota.
Been there.
Yeah. And
I made the journey all the way to Otter Tail. It was awesome.
Otter Tail County, is that it?
I made it to their facility. I gave them a rah-rah speech during the Trump stuff transition.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Nice. So essentially, it's going to cost $80 million to build a liquefied natural gas storage facility at this peaker plant in it's the Astoria station out there. And the reason Otter Tail is storing LNG instead of making it a dual fuel oil burning plant is they are concerned that EPA will limit their ability to burn fuel at the plant due to emissions restrictions. So there were also derate concerns with oil. It doesn't work as efficiently with oil as it does with natural gas. So they decided they were going to go to the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission and ask for permission to build this and recover that cost from their ratepayers. A bunch of the environmental groups in town decided that they were going to say, no, that is a bad idea. We would prefer to have that amount of battery storage on the grid instead. So the LNG storage tank would cost $80 million. Building enough battery storage to provide the same amount of energy for the same amount of time, so 5 days, would cost $11.25 billion, which is 141 times more expensive than the proposed LNG plant. And it's also 3 times more than Otter Tail Power's entire market cap. So it's an exorbitant amount of money to spend for probably I don't know, it's like maybe 20% of their system peak. It's pretty wild.
And that assumes that they could actually get their hands on that many batteries, which is no better than a jump ball nowadays.
Yeah, and it's going to assume that those batteries are charged. And that's no guarantee when you're using wind and solar to charge them. That's what happened in Hawaii. We wrote a piece earlier this year called Hawaii 5 Uh-oh. You can check that out on the Substack. But essentially, Hawaii decided it would be a smart idea to legislate the shutdown of the island's only coal plant and replace that with a battery. And Canary Media said, this is how Hawaii did this. And it's so great. They have a quote from a state senator saying, oh, well, we replaced the coal plant with a battery and we haven't had any reliability problems. And like 3 weeks later, this happens. So basically it was rainy and cloudy. So the solar couldn't charge the battery. The wind died down. And then they had oil-fired power plant problems too. So there's no guarantee that any of this stuff is going to be charged if you have a system that's primarily the energy is going to be wind and solar. It's just gambling with the grid at that point.
Okay. I got to tell this story because it's, I've been in and around LNG, the LNG side of the racket for about 20, 25 years now. And right at the top of it, Dan Inouye was still in the Senate. And I want to say every 6 months, Inouye would call our executives in and ask, can you please build an LNG facility on Hawaii? Because he knew he's just out there in the middle of the big Pacific Ocean and he wanted some kind of alternative to oil. And he knew it was going to have to be LNG if it was going to be something serious. And every meeting,
Taiwan too.
Every meeting ended the same way. They're like, hey, we'll have to look at the economics of it, Senator. And, it's one of those things. It just couldn't work.
Did you see that piece on PJM and Talon Energy as well?
Yeah, that was hilarious. Replacing an 800 megawatt coal plant with a battery wasn't going to work from a reliability standpoint. And it was going to cost something like $1 billion, which was more than the transmission upgrades that they need.
Yeah.
I ran the numbers. There's this guy on Twitter. I don't remember his name, but he's always like annoying me with like unrealistically low battery storage capacity numbers. He's like, oh, okay. No, China just released a new study that says, go ahead.
I just want to pause and say, I don't know, you're entering into Travis territory there. Keep going. I'm just messing with you.
I deserve it. I pulled a Fisher. I really stepped in it there. But yeah, he's like citing $56 a kilowatt hour. And the cost for the Brandon Shores battery replacement, which is the coal plant that we're talking about, was $416. So multiple times what that guy was citing. So like, there's a lot of like having done enough modeling of different energy systems and different energy policies, you can kind of tease out the common BS factors that the other side is using whenever they say, oh, wind and solar is the lowest cost form of energy. Unrealistic assumptions for how low the cost of wind and solar are is almost always their number one tool in their toolbox. The other one that's super fun is they assume all kinds of demand response. So they basically say, oh, we're not going to have an energy shortage. We're just going to ask people not to use energy.
Of course.
So, yeah, Mike, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say I was told that solar and wind are free. Aren't they free? They're free, aren't they? They're free. I was told they were free.
Well, I've
been told they're free.
And I keep hearing all these stats about how they're the cheapest form of energy, electricity generation. Why do they still need all the federal subsidies?
Let's not get there.
Sense.
All right,
we have to wrap.
I was going to say we have trespassed on his time long enough.
Do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to share with our listeners before we go? And we'll have you back on for sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, happy to be back on whenever. Just check out the Substack, Energy Bad Boys. We'll be announcing we've kind of done a soft launch of the new organization. We're working on those projects, but we'll have the website up soon, and then we'll be writing about it there. So check out Energy Bad Boys and have a great day.
Yeah, let me say this, Isaac. Your work is really, really good and timely and comprehensible, and it's just a winner. I encourage everybody to do Energy Bad Boys.
And I just was going to say, we have breaking news here on the Unregulated Podcast. Isaac has
He's flown.
Went on his own. He flew out of the nest, and
he's a corporate citizen.
No doubt you're going to be very successful with your organization. And
I hear that.
I'll see if I can scratch up some 10 grand or so to sit on the board.
I hear we're going to be on the board, so that's good.
I love it.
All right, my friend. Take it easy.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, that was fun. Thank you, Isaac. And we're going to obviously have him back. Wish him luck in his new endeavor. I'm sure he's not going to need it. However, the quality of the work that those two guys are doing are making meaningful and significant contributions to our cause here. So,
what's next?
All right, listen.
Chips?
The connection between chips and Solyndra is stronger than you might think.
Oh, CEO. Now we're talking.
Solyndra is a byword for the pitfalls of corporate welfare and industrial policy. Solyndra went out of business 2 years after receiving $500 million as part of the economic stimulus program of President Obama. So the government learned from this verifiable disaster, right? Well, maybe not. The former Intel executive mentioned was Brian Harrison, who was Solyndra's CEO in 2010 and 2011. What's Brian Harrison up to these days? He's the president of TSMC Arizona, the U.S. subsidiary of the Taiwanese semiconductor company that was recently awarded $6.6 billion from the CHIPS Act.
You just can't make this stuff up, man. How does that happen?
Harrison, who was overseeing TSMC's projects in Arizona, said he was involved in securing the federal financing in a media interview last August, reported the Washington Free Beacon. So the Solyndra CEO was rewarded for blowing $500 million of our tax dollars with being in charge or caretaking $6.6 billion.
I want you to remember this next time people say, why don't people trust the government? Because they do stuff like this, guys. It's pretty simple.
And then lastly, before we close, speaking of fuzzy math and inflation, did you hear about Governor Newsom's announcement atop the Golden Gate Bridge?
No.
Governor Newsom said that the state of California is now that spending in the state reached an all-time high.
Sure.
Of $150.4 billion last year, suppressing the record 144.9 in 2019 for our world-renowned coastline to the world's tallest trees, our iconic cities and theme parks. California's is the nation's coming attraction. So he basically boasted and bragged that California is number one in tourism. Well, not to be outdone, our good friend Governor DeSantis released a notice saying that today, Governor Ron DeSantis announced that Visit Florida data shows that Florida has made its position as the number one tourist destination in the United States and remaining a top destination for international visitors, ranked number 2.
These people should just get. This is an Indian strap match waiting to happen.
I know. Why don't they just jump in a cage?
I would love to see the two of these. I would love to see the two of these guys go after each other.
Now, in 2023, Florida's market share of domestic tourism increased to 14.8%, up from 13.8% in 2022. Surge in market share represents the largest increase of any state, according to Florida's appeal to voters from across the country. And then he made a point to jab. He said, while Florida's domestic market share increased, other formerly popular destinations saw negative shifts in their shares. California experienced a notable decline, losing 1.2 percentage points.
Just can't let it go. All right, now here's just can't let it go. Can't let it go. Yeah.
Governor didn't adjust for inflation.
Governor
Newsom.
Yeah.
So he basically fudged the numbers. The tourism numbers adjusted for inflation are lower than the year he bragged about. It would have had to been about $175 billion for it to actually be true.
I suspect he doesn't care about the The details.
Yeah, no, the details do not.
I could be wrong.
They don't seem to matter.
I wouldn't care either, because I mean, who's going to call them on
and
it?
I wonder why they're having so much trouble passing a budget.
I don't think they're having any trouble passing a budget. They just add a couple zeros to whatever they're spending. They're in business.
So, anyway, seriously, those two guys need to just
get over it, man. Just go knock each other out, man.
And then go have a beer.
Go have a beer, seriously.
All right, I got a campaign clip of the week.
Oh boy.
Campaign clip of the week. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Don Blankenship, candidate for the United States Senate, and I paid for this ad.
Don Blankenship will tell you the honest truth.
Don Blankenship, he's the most honest CEO in America.
Unfortunately, our government is not honest. Even the truth about the murders of Mr. Kennedy's dad and uncle are kept hidden. They even refuse to keep Mr. Kennedy safe because he left the party. Your choice is simple. You can vote for more lies, or you can vote for
most honest CEO in America.
If they tell you I fell off the bed and hung myself, I didn't.
Democracy's a great thing, man.
Yeah, you know, RFK Jr. was like sued the pants off of Don Blankenship when he was running Massey, right?
Yeah. What a great country we live in. Anybody can do anything.
And then I have a tweet. I have a new segment here called Tweet of the Week.
Yeah.
This one is from Eli Manning. I think you might appreciate it. I thought about attending the roast of Tom Brady last night, but I did not want to roast him for the third time.
Yeah, you kind of knew that was coming. You kind of knew that was coming.
All right, man, we are out of here. That is this week's Unregulated Podcast. I'm going to close with a little bit of humor this week.
Nick, what do you do for a living now? You work for the Biden administration. Is your job to wake them up, or what's your job? There's a war! I can't believe you admitted that in front of all these people. You have the freedom to lie. You could have said you were a hooker and I would have been proud of you. What do you do?
I travel to southern states.
Are you ready to be unemployed, or what's your vibe?
Oh boy, this is just going to be a fun year.
It's going to be great. It's going to be the greatest years of our lives.
It's going to be amazing. Boom. Unregulated number 181.
Namaste.